Frolo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frolo app is the one for you. The Frolo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frolo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frolo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frolo, search for Frolo, Frolo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frolo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi there, and welcome to Frolo, the Single Parent Podcast. I'm your host, Zoe Desmond, single parent and founder of Frolo, the Single Parent Community app. Frolo is all about empowering the single parent experience through friendship, community, and support. And this podcast brings you conversations with other single parents about their experiences and the challenges and rewards that go hand in hand with raising a child by yourself. There are so many different aspects to single parenting, and I think it's about time we put a more positive spin on the term single parent, because one thing is for sure, single parents are truly incredible. I hope you enjoy this episode of Frolo, the Single Parent Podcast. We're thrilled to introduce you to our sponsor for this episode, the Amicable Co-Parenting app. Built for and by co-parents, the app aims to reduce conflict and confusion and allow co-parents more time and energy to focus on what's important, their children. The app combines tools and advice to make co-parenting simpler, like a shared co-parenting calendar, goal setting, and secure private messaging. What makes the Amicable Co-Parenting app extra special is that you can access real human support from experienced coaches. So if you're having a specific problem in your co-parenting relationship, it's easy to ask for help. We know lots of Frolos use Amicable already, so head to amicable.co.uk now for your 30-day free trial. Welcome to the first episode in the new series of the Frolo podcast. It has been a while. Today I'm joined by James Hunt, single dad and co-parent to two boys, Jude and Tommy, who are both autistic. James has rallied awareness and community around his journey as a parent to boys with autism, which can be found on his blog, podcast and Instagram page, all called Stories About Autism. James, welcome to the Frolo podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. James, the last time we saw each other was at the Frolo app launch, which, can you believe it, was pushing up to maybe a year and a half ago now.
Yeah, I was trying to, before I came on, trying to remember exactly when that was.
It was early November 2019.
Yeah, it's strange. It feels like it could have been 2 months ago and it could have been 5 years ago. It's such a weird, weird last few months, isn't it?
I know. Well, weird year, really. Coming up, weird year. But we had a great night that night. You were brilliant. You were a speaker on a panel that we had along with a few other Frolos, and it was great. It went really well, and we all got to stick around and have a couple of drinks after, which was great fun. So I just don't know where time goes. So James, I would like to start by going back in time a bit. And I'd love to get an idea about what your life was like, say, 15 years ago, before you had the boys, before so much of your time revolved around, you know, being a parent to your boys and raising so much awareness with autism.
Sure. So, gosh, 15 years ago, have to think. So I was living in London. I grew up in London. 15 years ago, I was a tennis coach, actually.
Really?
Yeah. So I was a tennis coach for about 7 or 8 years. So yeah, life was pretty simple and straightforward. It revolved around uh, lots of lots of nights out, lots of spending time with friends, lots of enjoying London life, really. And yeah, I just imagine that's how life would continue.
And were you with the boy's mom at that time?
I think 15 years ago, yes, just about, yeah, just start probably very early days of dating.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Jude was born 2 years after we started going out. So within that time, I started a business. We got our first house, and yeah, had our first baby, Jude.
That is a busy couple of years.
Yeah, it was all crammed into about three months as well. The business, the birth, and the house was all. It was a very manic time.
They say that those three things are in the top, like most stressful things a person can go through as well. Yeah. And so, how old are Jude and Tommy now?
So Jude will be 13 in May, and Tommy will be 10 in June. So 12 and 9 at the moment.
Okay. And going back then with Jude, when was the first time that you had an indication that maybe he might be autistic?
So, I mean, his mum spotted it first. Not that we knew what autism really was, or that he was autistic, just that he was, let's say, developing differently to the babies that she was spending time with in the baby groups and the other families she was getting to know locally. He was 6-7 weeks premature when he was born, so I always assumed it was just down to that. He was a bit behind in his milestones. He everything from crawling to playing with toys, everything was way behind compared to the other kids who his mum was getting to know. So that was her main concern. I'd say that was when he was around 9 months. He was a bit vacant at times when it came to, if I called his name, he wouldn't look at me, or sometimes he would, but most of the time he'd be sort of, I guess I'd describe it as off in his own world almost. So his mum was concerned. We went to the doctors. They said there's nothing to worry about. It's he's a boy. He's behind. He'll catch up. But that feeling obviously never went away. And okay. I think me being the dad at the time who was off working every day and just sort of spending time with him in the evenings and weekends, and not being around other babies, I didn't see it. I didn't, I'd sort of sided with the doctor and thought it was good news that, everything's going to be okay. He'll catch up. He's just a boy.
Yeah. And I think that's probably typically mothers can be a bit more, sensitive to different things that happen with kids generally anyway. So I think we are just a bit more, an ability to go, oh, what's this or what's that, or let's look into this, or could this be wrong, or is this happening the right way? Whereas, it's obviously a generalization, but
yeah, I think and I think it's because obviously the amount of time you spend with the child and with other children to be able to compare them to. So she, the first doctor's appointment, we sort of put it out of our minds, but with her, it obviously stayed, and she kept, pushing me, to sort of see things from her point of view, which, I did eventually. And, we went back to the doctor again, he was quite reluctant. And then I think we went on holiday when he was about I'd say maybe 13, 14 months, something like that. And we had a German couple staying next door to us, and their daughter was about 3 or 4 months younger than Jude. And she was walking and talking, and she was wanting to play with him. And he couldn't get away from her quickly enough. He couldn't, he wanted nothing to do with her. And it was then that I guess my eyes were open to, oh wow. First off, I sort of laughed it off as, these Germans, they're so advanced and they're so clever and everything. But yeah, I think that week sort of living next door to that couple, and seeing their daughter every day, I guess opened my eyes to, okay, maybe it's not just time that's going to make a difference here. We need to push it a bit more.
And do you remember how you felt at that time? Was it like panic? Was it getting into kind of sort of business mode, or what was going on for you?
I think for me personally, I didn't know really anything about autism, and it wasn't, even then on that holiday, it wasn't autism that was jumping out and thinking, oh, that's what it is. Just knew that something was wrong, or was different. So I guess we then had another appointment and had a referral, and sort of autism was discussed as a possibility. And I think in those few months between then and sort of the diagnosis that, you sort of, you spend your time Googling and trying to find out more. And back then, most of the stuff online about autism was very medical, very professional. There wasn't blogs and, videos of different families and things like that was easy to find. So it was very just like reading a medical textbook and trying to imagine that as Jude. So I guess I was quite scared, overwhelmed, and just really not knowing what to do next.
What are the stats around autism? Because I'm just thinking in relation to, say, the stats for single parents are 1 in 4 families in the UK. So I'm just wondering what the stats are for autism.
Okay, so I think the latest studies from a few years ago said there's about 1 in 80.
1 in 80.
One in sort of between 1 in 75 and 80. And I think a lot of that comes from, there's lots of people getting diagnosed at a later age now.
Okay.
Where so there's a lot more adults being diagnosed, where it's obviously been missed in younger years. So that's part of the reason of the increase, and just that it's much more widely known about, and it's the diagnosis is much better now than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah. What are, and I'd love to keep going with the kind of the story and the journey about how everything happened, but just, for anybody listening that doesn't have any direct relationship to anyone with autism or hasn't had any direct experience of it, like, what are the biggest misconceptions about it in your mind, and what are kind of the things that you would like to sort of raise awareness about it to those who don't have direct experience with it?
So I think, especially for those who have no direct experience to it, we kind of get a very narrow view of what autism is and what it means to people who are autistic. So, for instance, before Jude was born, the only real reference I had to autism was the movie Rain Man. And, so you start thinking, it's going to have this superhuman skill of, being good at maths or being an artist or being... and autistic people are like you and me. They're unique. Everybody's different. They share traits that are similar, but just because you're autistic, it doesn't mean there's any more chance of you being a maths genius than there is, of being someone who's this amazing artist. It's such a wide and varied spectrum. So I think it's quite a common saying in the autism community that if you've met one person who's autistic, you've met one person who's autistic. There's no, my cousin's brother's son's autistic, he's like this, so your son must be like that too. So I think that's the main thing. And I think that's what makes it hard for people to understand, is it is such a wide and varied spectrum. There are people who are autistic who work full-time and get married and have kids, and there's people who are autistic who end up in care homes who need full-time care 24/7. So that, I think, is something for people to always try and understand and bear in mind.
Yeah, I have a close friend whose son, who is 2 years old, has just been diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder called Angelman's syndrome.
Okay, yeah.
Have you ever heard of it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know too much about it, but I've heard, just through, I guess, the disability community that I'm in, you hear about these things.
I had never heard of it before, but now, I see my two close friends going through this, and it's quite recent. It's only been a few months ago he was diagnosed, and just witnessing how their whole future has been turned upside down, and their world, and witnessing the kind of roller coaster of trying to create hope and trying to figure out how they can do the best they can do to give him the best chance, and wondering where he is going to fall on the Angelman syndrome spectrum, because there's a spectrum with that as well. And, it's just, as you say, just it has made, it's been a real wake-up call to witness them going through that, and just realize all of the things we take for granted in our lives, having healthy kids or kids without a disability, and what that means. And it's been an eye-opener seeing them go through this, and it just made me think of them, hearing what you're saying now about what that must have felt like at that part of the journey, when everything is suddenly, it changes the vision of your future.
Yeah, and I think it comes and goes in waves over time. How it's, as I said, Jude's nearly 13, so it's sort of 11, 12 years on, and even now I don't know what his future holds. I don't know what my future holds. There's days where it's really hard and tough to deal with, and there's days where it's okay, and the new life you've got is completely okay and happy. So I think, with your friends in mind, I think over time it does get easier, because I think, kind of like we've all been through in the last year, your life becomes a new normal. You adapt, and it might not be how you imagined it's going to be. And I think, like everyone listening, you don't imagine you're going to be a single parent, but you adapt and you change, and your vision of life evolves. But yeah, in the moment, it's really hard. It's really emotional, and it can take a long time to sort of come to terms with that.
So with that in mind, what were the steps that you took at that time, or what would you recommend to somebody else taking at that kind of point of where you were at, where you got the diagnosis?
Yeah. So, I'm a massively different person now than I was then. I wouldn't say I buried my head in the sand. Like I did loads of research about autism, but it was almost like taking on too much information in one go, and it just felt very overwhelming. And I found it really hard to talk about. I found it really hard to talk about with friends, talk about with family. It was such an emotional subject for me. I really struggled. So when we went on a course provided by sort of the local council for, a sort of introduction to autism course, and there were other parents there, and it was like 10 sessions or 12 sessions or whatever it was, and it was good. It was informative, but I didn't make any connections with the other parents. I just turned up every week and then left as quickly as I could, and I regret that. I've come to learn how important community is, and getting to know other families who have lives similar to yours. Like Frolo's a community. It helps talking to other single parents, or it helps talking to other parents whose kids are autistic or whose kids have special needs. So I'd highly recommend anyone who is in the early days, or before or after diagnosis, to take their time. It's okay to feel however you're feeling in that moment, whether you're sad or angry or or even maybe you're hopeful and relieved and ready to move on and do everything you can to make life as good for your kid as possible. But however you feel, that's okay. Take your time. Let it sink in. There's so many years ahead for therapies and all the different things that you're going to go through. So take a moment to let it sink in, and then reach out and find other families, either locally or online, and get those people around you who just understand what life is like.
And that's obviously, you've created now your blog and your community around that. So it sounds like kind of went to the opposite end of the spectrum, with kind of avoiding the community to actually fully embracing it and creating it.
Yeah, I think, a couple of years down the line, I started to understand what I was missing out on. And I learnt from reading other blogs and talking to other people online, and just decided to start doing the same. That I could see how much it was helping me, so I thought that if I could share some of my stories, it might help other people too.
Yeah, well, you and I both have that in common, that creating a community around our own an experience that's come from struggle, kind of, I would say it's the thing that has sort of saved me from that place of struggle. It really is so powerful and life-changing, how the positive impact that just being able to connect with other people who understand what you're going through, for friendship and support through the good days and the bad, can be.
Yeah, it really makes such a difference. Like you said, I think that's sort of how we connected in the first place, sort of seeing that in each other, and what you were trying to do with Frolo. It's such a good feeling when you're able to reach out to someone who gets it, and it's such a good feeling when someone else, you're able to share some of your experiences and help them too. So I feel similar. I guess it saved me in a time where life's been pretty tough.
Yeah. And then going on, how many years after Jude was Tommy born and diagnosed, and then I'm assuming that you were just coming to terms with Jude, and then Tommy, was it a shock?
Yeah, so they're 3 years apart in age, and they were pretty much diagnosed about 3 years apart in diagnosis times as well. I think Tommy was around 20, 21 months, something like that, when he got the formal diagnosis. But, you know, by then we'd known for a long time that it was coming.
As in, you saw...
Yeah, saw the signs. So it takes... I mean, back then it took about 6 months or so from raising it with the doctor to getting a diagnosis. Nowadays, it can be 2-3 years. So I know we were very lucky back then that things were different. But yeah, I guess I think with Tommy, we were always looking for it from day one, almost. Just subconsciously, you know there's a chance he might be autistic. You know what it's like to go through a diagnosis, so you just automatically, if he does anything similar to what Jude used to do, you think, oh, does that mean he's autistic too?
And is it common or likely?
It's a real tricky subject. There's not any definitive proof, but of sort of what causes autism, or is it genetics or so on. But I think there is more chance if you have an autistic child that another child of yours would be autistic than, say, for you to have an autistic child.
Sure.
But it's not, there's plenty of families who have one child who's autistic and 3 or 4 kids who aren't. So it's, I don't know. We knew that there's an increased chance. And yeah, it just turned out that Tommy was autistic as well. And we started seeing, again, probably around 8-9 months, sort of signs that made us concerned. And yeah, he was diagnosed about a year after that.
It sounds like it wasn't half as much as a shock as the first time, but what kind of reaction did that spark in you and your partner at that time then for the second time around?
Yeah, I think, as you said, it wasn't a shock. And I think for me, it almost hit me harder because now I knew more about some of the challenges that Jude was having. And here was Tommy, who was probably going to have very similar challenges as well. And also them thinking about the logistics of having, 2 kids who have such sort of profound needs and what that means for life in general. So yeah, I think it was I kind of cringe saying it looking back now, but like how could this happen twice? That sort of feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Jude was more, it was like an overwhelming, confusing time, but then Tommy was more, we'd had sort of 3 years of learning about autism, so knew a lot more what to expect, which was good in a way, but then also quite emotional in a way too.
I can only imagine. And obviously you are a single parent now, so you're not with the boy's mom. So what was your relationship like, if you don't mind me asking, around the diagnosis, and how did it impact things? Because obviously having a kid is stressful at the best of times and puts any relationship under pressure. I mean,
it clearly adds another dynamic of pressure. It's, for us, we split up about 5 years ago, and I'd say the sort of 2-3 years before that were, really, really challenging because, Jude never used to sleep. He used to, never. He used to go to sleep at like past midnight, 1 o'clock, wake up at 3-4 o'clock, be up for 2 or 3 hours. So that definitely didn't help, having years of no sleep. Yeah. He also had a very tough few years of having meltdowns, and sort of quite physical meltdowns where he'd sort of self-harm and self-injure. So, if I'm honest, the emotional impact of that for 2 or 3 years, it affects life. It affects, it affected my job. It affected my relationships. It affected, because nothing seems important anymore. Like, when you're at work trying to deal with a problem, it doesn't seem important because your son's at home crying, hitting himself around the face. It's it just, that becomes all consuming, I think. And it impacted work, it impacted, finances and fun, being able to go out and have fun, being able to see friends, see family. And I think just, over time, it puts a lot of strain. And I wouldn't for a minute say that's why we split up, but I also have to be honest and say, of course, it puts a strain on your day-to-day functioning of life. So that obviously impacts relationships.
Of course. And was it something that you were able to plan and manage?
Yeah, I think, we're quite lucky that, any breakup is hard. It's never going to be completely smooth and amicable. There's a lot of feelings involved. So, but I think in a way, because of Tommy and Jude's needs, we were both able to realise that we kind of had to park everything we felt to one side and figure out, okay, well, how do we care for them in the best way whilst also going through a breakup and, separating and everything else. So yeah, I think it took about 6 months, 9 months to, sell the house and do those sort of things. We lived together for most of that time. I think I used to spend some of the week at my parents and some of the week at the house at some times, and take one of the boys to my parents and then come back. But yeah, we were able to sort of go through that period and still come out of it okay, I guess.
Well, that's, I have to say, an amazing testament to you both, especially given all of the pressures, thrown into the mix. And then also the impact that it must have had on, both you and your ex-partner's mental health at the time, the strain of trying to kind of function, I suppose, with so much pressure.
Yeah, and I think in a way that probably gave us a focus. You can't, I'd imagine, during a breakup, it's easy to focus on all the, the reasons why you don't like the other person and get into arguments and of course we had arguments that otherwise we would have been together, I guess. But yeah, I think focusing on the boys' care and needs meant that, there was less chance of that happening. And even, before that, Jude and Tommy, and still to this day, they really struggled to be around each other. Tommy is quite loud and unpredictable, and that's one of Jude's triggers for just life in general. He likes peace and quiet and predictability. So Tommy was actually quite a trigger for him and his meltdowns. So even when we were together, we were spending lots of time with, one of us upstairs with one of them and one downstairs with the other, or one of us at the park with one and one of us at home with the other. So I guess we kind of just fell into that, and we're already doing that at home. So
Right.
So yeah, we just ended up carrying on.
And is that still your co-parenting arrangement now? That's how you and the boy's mom manage it? It's one of the boys with you at each time?
For practical reasons, for the fact they pretty much need one-to-one care anyway, in an ideal world. So yeah, I have one of the boys every day. She has one of the boys every day, and we swap every day or two. So yeah, unfortunately, they don't spend any time together, or rarely. It's something we obviously would love to improve, and for their sake, for them to have some sort of relationship, and for it to be easier for us to have some respite too. Logistically, I have to be here every day for the boys, for whichever one I have. Obviously, it'd be much easier if I could have both of them, or she could have both of them, and it would give us more free time.
And do you think that could be on the horizon?
I'd say going back a year pre-pandemic, it was looking a small chance it was getting better, but yeah, this last year it's no. It's and it's not just the pandemic, but it stopped. For instance, they were trying to integrate them more at school, but then that they can't do that now because of classroom bubbles and things like that. So that was something they were doing, and we were hoping would help, but yeah, and to be honest, Jude is, I think, at the first stages of puberty and having a bit of a tricky time. So I think if he saw Tommy at the moment, it might send him over the edge. So, but maybe in years to come.
And speaking about the pandemic and this very surreal year that we've been in, how have you been doing? What's it been like for you?
Where do I start? I think I think like everyone, it's been a real roller coaster. It's there's been good days and bad days, and I think the last few months have almost been tougher than most of the previous year. For us, there was the added element of Jude and Tommy had no school, and for them, they had no understanding of why, or where all those routines have gone. Why can't they go swimming anymore? Why can't they go to the trampoline park anymore? So that sort of March to June period was pretty tricky, but we had nice weather and we could get outside and go for walks, and we got through it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's, I think, like we were saying before we came on, it's just been such a strange year. It's been very isolating. It's been even more isolating than life is in general, which can be pretty isolating at times. And yeah, and some days you feel like you've got it all together and you can take on the world, and other days you don't want to talk to anyone and you want to just hide under the duvet.
And how do you find those moments for yourself when you have one of the boys all the time, or do you? What is your version of self-care?
I think for me, exercise is always important, and I don't do it enough. But I know when I do, I feel a lot better. So that is what I try and focus on. And whether that's doing something for 10 minutes at home, or whether that's going for a run, or going to the gym when it is ever open, that's pretty important. My blog is a sort of huge support for me. There's lots, and I've made some really good friends from it, but also there's lots of people I talk to every day, and I think when you focus on their questions and challenges, it kind of detracts you a little bit from what's going on in your life, I guess. So yeah, that gives me a bit of a focus to sort of pull myself out when I'm feeling a bit down. And, you know, I'm lucky that through the blog, there's lots of people who are very interested in how I'm getting on and how Jude and Tommy are getting on. So there's always people there to make you feel a bit better and perk you up.
And in terms of, say, if the boys are, you know, whoever is with you at the time is having a meltdown, and because obviously I have my son Billy is almost 5 now, and he's not autistic, but I am used to tantrums. When they happen and when they're bad ones, like I really, really struggle, and I find it tests me so much and my ability to remain composed and patient. And I also find sometimes that my head goes into a space where I feel sorry for myself because I'm dealing with it on my own and there's no one else there to help or to see or to lend support. So I'm just wondering, in the moments with your boys, how do you cope when it feels like things are at their absolute most stressful?
That's a good question. Honestly, yeah, some days I don't. Some days I have all those thoughts that you just mentioned and, you know, wish that there was someone else who could step in and help, or if there was someone else to just, you could both sit there and talk about it after it finished, or, you know, and help get each other back on track. Or, you know, sometimes it would be great for, you know how it is, if your kid's having a tantrum or a meltdown and you're the one dealing with it, sometimes another person would just help them snap out of it a bit faster. Or so yeah, it is tough. I have plenty of days where I wallow and think, you know, woe is me doing this all on my own. But I think for me, that's where having that community comes in, is I know I can talk about it with them. I can rant, I can vent, I can, you know, just say what's going on in my head. And that to me always helps. Either saying it out loud or writing it down and posting it on a blog post, or it just, because it does always feel better the next day or a few days later. You know, you don't feel like it 24/7. And I think over time you come to realize that, you know, that you almost feel in that moment like, oh yeah, I feel terrible. This is so hard. But you can remind yourself that I felt like this before, and I'll be okay tomorrow.
Exactly. And then in terms of the community aspect of it, I suppose that's what's really helpful, isn't it? Because you see other people who say they struggle with exactly the same thing, and then when you're able to kind of give them empathy and reassurance, and I deal with this too, and hang in there. And as you said earlier on in the conversation, there's something that's really cathartic about being able to support somebody else.
Yeah, I think that's, thinking about it, that's something I tend to do. Like if I'm having a particularly hard day or time, I'll probably end up replying to more messages, or you know, talking to people who I know who, you know, almost searching for those who are struggling, and doing my bit for them. That kind of, I guess, just takes away the focus of what's going on in your life.
James, if only everybody could adopt that approach, we would live in a much nicer world, wouldn't we?
Be, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Dealt with the problem that way. So how does dating fit into all of this? What's your view on it?
Well, it's 5 years and I'm still single, so it's obviously not going very well. Yeah, look, I would love to meet somebody. It's tricky, you know. I'm a full-time dad. I don't get very much free time, and I don't get very much regular free time. So it's hard to, you know, I've been on plenty of dates, or, you know, I seem to go through phases of, okay, that's it, fire the dating apps up again, I'm going to go for it. And you spend a few months and, you know, but when it takes sort of 6 weeks to go on 2 dates with someone, or, you know, you just think, is it worth it? Is it, you know, is it ever going to go anywhere? And, you know, maybe it's a story I'm telling in my head now after 5 years of not really going anywhere. But because of the change in my lifestyle to how, from what I imagined, or, you know, how I saw life, and the fact that I get such little free time, I find it hard to see how someone else is going to adapt to that. So I probably talk myself out of it, and end up, as I say, going on 2 or 3 dates and then thinking, well, you know, I can't go away for the weekend. I can't be there every other weekend when you're free, or, you know, so I just don't see how our lives mix. So yeah, that's my bit of counselling.
Well, I think a lot of single parents do relate to that, you know, because wrapping your head around getting yourself back out there, like once you have kids, and, you know, there's a lot more at stake, and especially for those of us who have been through relationship breakdowns, it's a bit scarier kind of opening the door up again. So I do think a lot of people will relate to that. But you know that there's a Frolo dating app on the horizon, do you?
I've heard rumours, yeah. It might be happening. So maybe that'll be the one, so I can, not have to worry about any of the other dating apps.
So that the Frolo dating app will be specifically for single parents and designed in a way that makes it easier and less intimidating for single parents to navigate dating. So anyway, I hope that will help. And there's going to be the ability to do virtual kind of speed dates and things like that on it. So I think for a lot of single parents, and especially in the times that we're in, and trying to organize, you know, face-to-face dates, like, you know, it's really hard. And obviously then it's sorting out childcare, and then you don't even know if you're going to actually hit it off with the person, you know, and all of that. So yeah, I think there are easier ways for a single parent to kind of test the waters in the first instance. So James, looking back now, what do you think you would say to yourself in those early days when the boys were younger, and when you were just going through your own, you know, relationship breakdown, and when things, I guess, were at its hardest point for you? If you could talk to that person now, what would you say?
I think the first thing would be that it's going to be okay. You know, it's, no matter how hard it might seem in that moment, or how difficult life is, it will get better. And there are people out there who care about you and who want the best for you and who will help that happen. You might they might be people you already know. They might be people you've not even met yet. But there are people out there who will help make your life better. And I think just to, I guess when you're ready, talk about it. And it might just be talking about it to a friend. It might be talking about it in, a group like on Frolo or somewhere like that, just with other people who understand. And I really think that the more you talk about things, the less intimidating they are, or the less scary they feel. So, I probably haven't spoken as much about single parenting or being a single parent, as I do about autism. And I think for me, I probably could have spoken about single parenting a lot more, or, even just to a friend. And that, that would have really helped.
And speaking about what we were talking about just before we started recording, on the Frolo app, there's group chats, topic-related group chats, ranging from recipe exchange to co-parenting tips to single parent hacks to dating support group. But you are going to set up one for parents of special needs kids.
Yeah. As you said, we were talking, and I think it's always good to talk to people who have something in common. And I think, it's a sort of subset of parents. So it would be a good idea to have a place to chat, and because there are things that you'll talk about that other parents just aren't going to have any experience of, or don't have to worry about. So I think that could be a good idea.
That would be great. And at this time when we're recording this, there are 20,000 users on the app across the UK and Ireland, and there are definitely a large, a substantial portion of our users that do have kids with special needs. It does come up. It does come up a lot on the app. So it would be great to have a place for everyone to connect about that same shared experience. And James, it has been so interesting and insightful chatting with you today. And thank you so much for speaking so openly and candidly about everything. And huge respect to you for everything that you have done to help yourself and the boys on your own journey, and help other people through your blog and your Instagram and your podcast. If you would mind just sharing with our listeners where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Zoe. It's been a pleasure. It's been really good to talk to you. My blog is called Stories About Autism. So you can find me mainly on Facebook and Instagram, Stories About Autism, and the website storiesabouautism.com.
Amazing. James, thank you so much. And we will look forward to getting the group up on the app, so people will also be able to find you on there as well. It's been such a pleasure, and I look forward to hopefully catching up in person when the world returns to normal, which will hopefully be is sometime in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be really good. Thanks, Zoe. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, James.
If you would like to connect with other single parents in your area, as well as a wider community of single parents, and access support and advice easily, download the Frolo app and join us. Otherwise, head to our website, www.frolo.com, and sign up to our newsletter to stay connected to us. All the links are in the show notes. To help us reach more single parents, it really helps us when you subscribe to this podcast and leave us a rating and review. So we would be really grateful if you could take a minute to do so. You've been listening to Frolo, the Single Parent Podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Until next time, have a great week.